Hello everyone and welcome to the Contenders Korea edition of the Contenders Overview. I'm Syphyt and sitting here with me today is Legday, who will be going over Element Mystic and O2 Blast coming into the Pacific Showdown. Hi Legday, let's get into our first segment of the show called Too Long Didn't Watch. What can you tell me about Element Mystic and O2 Blast?
Well, everyone loves Element Mystic. For a couple of seasons now, they have been pretty unique, mostly due to a guy called Sparkle and his very diverse hero pool, mostly his impeccable Doomfist play. In Element Mystic, in recent memory, they've been kind of choky. They've got to playoffs before, but haven't done overly well in them. They've always fallen at the last or second to last hurdle, and it was against Runaway in Season 3, so I imagine they're very glad we didn't have to go up against Runaway in the finals. And their Sombra Doomfist compositions, featuring Doha and Sparkle as their Sombra and Doomfist respectively, will be one of the things that everyone's going to be looking at in Pacific Showdown. As for O2 Blast, they're a bit more classic with the 3-3, the GOATs kind of team in Korea. They're definitely one of the best at that in the region. They managed to beat Runaway in 3-3 matchups, so that's a pretty impressive feather to have in one's cap. And also they have the famous Eye of the Kaiser on their team, the guy who pretty much gave the name to Big Earth Shadows back in Apex Season 2 on that infamous Icon Vault. So his playoff capacity is very high. The guy doesn't really choke that much under pressure and brings it when the pressure is on. So if you're looking out for a really good 3-3 team, it's definitely O2 Blast who you want to look for. They've also got an innovative counter to Sombra 3-2-1, which is to put their off-tank Krong onto Hanzo, and he's got a very mean Hanzo.
Were these teams favorites coming to the season?
Element Mystic were favorites for approximately 20 seconds coming into the season, and in their first week they got 4-0'd by a Trials team, WGS Summit, who were like, things have not gone well in the break. This new patch might not be what they were looking for. It's pretty dominant in terms of like how strong 3-3 is right now, and previously Element Mystic were kind of riding on the coattails of Sparkle with his Doomfist, which obviously got nerfed a little bit over the course of the last few 5 or 6 patches, which Contenders has run through since Season 3. So they, after being 4-0'd in the first week, they were no longer favorites. So like, okay, I think they can maybe squeak into the playoffs if they beat Geekstar and maybe they beat someone else as well. And also they brought in a new flex support and didnt in place of, I believe, Fix Me. And also Eggsy, who's on their team as a hit scan DPS, but occasionally plays Zenyatta. And it seems like it really took a while to integrate him into their calling structure, because they didn't look very cohesive at all for the first few weeks. And then later on, they definitely ramped up how oppressive they were being in terms of their matchups.
Our next segment is going to be all about surprises. Legday, what surprised you this season?
Probably going into a match casting O2 Blast and realizing it doesn't look like O2 Blast roster, because they didn't pick up one person. 2 people. They picked up half a team. They picked up 3 people. And not only that, they basically poached 3 people. They took 3 people from WGS Summon. There was no announcement anywhere that we could find. There was nothing on Over.gg. There was nothing on Twitter. We asked management of Korean teams that we knew, and they're like, we don't know either. Mandu, Myeongbong, and Pelican are apparently on O2 Blast now. We don't know how they got there or why they're there, but they're now on O2 Blast. And what's even more surprising is that they got half a new team and then proceeded to beat Runaway, who had been together for like 2 seasons now, had gone pretty much undefeated until something that we'll talk about later, and then they beat Runaway in playoffs nonetheless. Like, you look at playoffs, you're like, this is where people choke, this is where synergy gets stretched and it's beaten down if it isn't perfect. But they went into playoffs with basically 2 halves of a team that quickly became one O2 Blast, and that was super impressive. That was the most surprising thing to me all season.
Did any players stand out from the crowd?
Well, like I mentioned before, Krong and his Hanzo definitely captured a lot of imagination. There was also Edison on GC Busan Wave. We didn't really know. Well, we did know what to expect from coming into this season. We expected very good things, but we didn't think that it would be so inconsistent how GC Busan Wave were playing. They were a little bit here and there, and Edison eventually shuffled over onto the Sombra, and that was a huge boon for his team. His Sombra play was pretty good. and it also gave a little bit of trouble to O2 Blast as well. So can't complain about him. He was also, obviously, we've got Doha and Sparkle, who are currently being touted for Best Doomfist and Best Sombra in the world, respectively. I say Sparkle, he's got Doomfist locked up. It's a little bit more of a narrow playing field, I guess, between like him and maybe Hydration or maybe Migia from China, but there's also Doha with the Sombra field, which is also incredibly narrow. You've got a lot of people there who could be described as the best Sombra, but Doha's EMP generation right now is head and shoulders above the rest, and maybe his EMP usage could use a tiny little bit of work, but aside from that, I think he's definitely a big contender for that spot.
And lastly, Legday, which teams stepped up this season?
Definitely Element Mystic past week 2. They really got their synergy together, and of course O2 Blast really did so well to come in with 3 new players they stole away from another team and generate a very cohesive team. But I'd say another team that really stepped up was WGS Armament, who Mandu, Myumbong, and Pelican were taken from for O2 Blast, and they still managed to make their way into playoffs with the 3 replacements that they got, including, I believe, 4-0ing at Team MVP, who needed to win only 1 map to get that last spot in playoffs, but eliminated themselves with what could have been described as one of the biggest chokes in Korean Overwatch history.
Our next segment is predictions. Legday, what can we expect if next season starts in a few months?
I think Runaway will come back very strong. They added Decal to their roster at the beginning of this season, and he's a very accomplished projectile player, especially on Pharah. So I think it all depends on what kind of patch we move into. Because obviously Blizzard are giving some attention still to trying to give a little bit more firepower towards tanks and make sure that 3-3 isn't as prevalent as it once was, and it's starting to sort of fade away. And I wonder if we'll see the pervasion of bunker compositions from ladder into professional play itself, and if that's the case, I'm not sure who the best Orisa in Korea really would be. Obviously, Element Mystic have 2 main tanks in Alpha and Takoyaki, so they can move between those 2 depending on who's the better Orisa, who's better suited for a more static composition compared to a more mobile Winston-led composition. But yeah, if we went over to next season, it would honestly depend so much on the patch, because all of these teams have such different specialties. Like Element Mystic look a little bit like they are Titanic when they can bring out a Sombra Doomfist as a powerful combination, but if something changes for one of those heroes, maybe it won't be as effective.
And what do you want to see the middle of the pack teams do to step up their game?
I want to see Gen G just not choke so much. Gen G in playoffs, they came in. Gen G were one of my favorite teams coming into the playoffs, but they crumbled. They disintegrated. They got Thanos snapped out of existence the second that they made it to that LAN. There was just nothing from Gen G the second that we got to playoffs, but they've got so much talent on that team. They've got Wakid, they've got Stalker, they've got Wuyal. There is so much talent that can be utilized on that team, and I think that if they actually deal with the choking issues, if they can perform like they performed in group stages at playoffs, they could easily win Season 2.
Here's the big one, Legday. It's Showdown Talk. What do you think it's going to take for Element Mystic and O2 Blast to make it far during the showdown?
Well, O2 Blast, it's going to be the most raw sort of competition between Korea and Australia straight in the first round. As far as I'm aware, Order are a pretty strong 3-3 team, and O2 Blast are our representative 3-3 team, given that they don't really flex off too much. So I think that that's just going to be a straight clash of the same sort of compositional playstyle from 2 different regions, seeing how their different playstyles interlock. And O2 Blast, if they want to be able to win that one, once again, Kaiser's going to have to step up on land and give one of his earth-shattering performances, for want of a better word. As for Element Mystic, well, they've got to buy in the first round, so it's not going to be too difficult for them. And then they're going up against the winner of T1W and Talon Esports. And some people would think that's a pretty easy side of a bracket for them to be on, but I don't know a huge amount about Talon. The thing is, whoever goes up against them is going to need the crystal clear communication, because they're going to have to deal with so many threats, and we're going to have to deal with threats that are unorthodox for people who've been scrimming 3-3 for such a long time. Once again, it's going to come down to Doha and Sparkle. They're really going to capture the imagination of any Western audiences who tune in for Pacific Showdown but haven't necessarily watched Contenders Korea that much, is for sure. Going to be looking as well at how Element Mystic rotate around Alpha and Takoyaki as their main tank line, because They seem to kind of swap them around at random at the moment. I've been looking back and I can't figure out the pattern just yet. I'm sure given more time I'll figure out what they're doing. It might even just be map dependent rather than map type dependent what they're going to do, but those guys being able to swap around their main tank, it doesn't seem to affect their communication as much as it would affect a lot of other teams. So there's potential that with the differing playstyles of these tanks, they may be able to completely catch off a team that thinks they've sort of like got the skinny on what Element Mystic is doing. As for O2 Blast, well, there are 3-3 teams, so it's a little bit harder to pick out anyone in particular as to who I think has been doing the best, especially considering the level of insight that we have into the games, given that we've only got the singular camera angle from any sort of Contenders feed. So I'd say that obviously I've been touting Kaiser a lot and Krong's Hanzo. The rest of the team, we just need to play together, continue playing how they do, and they should be absolutely fine there.
Our last segment is going to be the match to watch. Legday, if people want to watch one match from Contenders Korea, what's the most entertaining one?
Well, I'd have to point you to the last match on the last day of the last week. Element Mystic going up against Runaway, the breaking of the streak. We've had a lot of streak breaking in Contenders this season. We've also seen Fusion Uni toppled from that mountain, even though they didn't go on to lose everything, as it were. They did still win. They didn't have the perfect group stage that they were looking for, and the same thing happened in Korea, except with Runaway not winning. But Element Mystic managed to take them down in group stages, which gave us all like, we didn't think Element Mystic were that good. We thought they were sort of like scraping by into playoffs. They might like get 3rd or 4th if they're lucky. It was super entertaining, and it really shows how a team's mentality can fall apart, but that's all the hints I'm going to give you.
That's going to be it for this Korean edition of the Contenders Overview. Thanks to Broadcast.gg and The Grind for hosting this project. And the biggest thanks goes out to Legday for knocking this one out of the park. Thank you very much, Harry. If you guys like what you saw, consider subscribing to Broadcast.gg and definitely let me know what you've thought of this series so far.